Hey there, I'm Chad Teft. I'm Chad Teft Steel Challenge on YouTube. So I started a YouTube channel a little while back, and it's just for fun. I shoot Steel Challenge in the state of Michigan. I shoot PCC optics, and I also shoot rimfire rifle optics. And I'm part of the Tippman owners group on Facebook. And I was reaching out to those guys because I'll go to a shoot. I don't edit any of the footage that I do. I just dump it raw onto YouTube for people to look at if they have questions about Steel Challenge, what it's about, what it's like. It's a lot of fun. Anybody that's interested in doing it should definitely go online, look at practice score. You can search your areas there. You can also go to USPSA, find clubs there as well that participate. There's a tremendous amount of them. But anyway, so to kind of get the channel going a little bit, I put out in the owners group the other day, is there anything specific they would like to see? And Bill Renner actually replied back and said that he would like to see how to install a trigger. This is for the Tippman. Now the Tippman, for those of you that don't know, the Tippman is actually an AR platform and 22 long rifle. It's pretty unique in the fact that it is very AR. And those of you that have a Smith & Wesson 1522, you'll know what I'm talking about. This actually uses a true buffer system. It is the closest thing to mil spec, in my opinion, in my experience, I've seen in an AR platform. Fun gun, great gun to shoot, really enjoying it so far. I started shooting it last year. There's probably at a minimum of 10,000 rounds for this gun, if not double that. Don't really keep track all that well. Very few failures. The only failures I've ever had with this gun is when I failed to load the magazine properly. I've learned my lesson. It's cost me some time on the challenges before, but I got that down to a science now, and looking forward to picking up one of the new speed loaders for the Tippman that's coming out soon. So what I'm going to do, Bill, this is for you. Most of you folks are going to know how to pull out a fire control group from an AR. I don't have another trigger to install on it, so I'm simply going to take out what I have, show you a few parts about the trigger, how it installs, how you can take it out for cleaning. I'm not a gunsmith. This is all from experience, trial and error. Yes, I've had those days where I've lost those little springs and detents and things like that. And honestly, my best resource so far has been YouTube to do a little studying and find out what other people are doing. With that, mileage may vary. I don't play a doctor, just on TV. And enjoy. And if you have any questions or comments, throw them down below. Okay, so here you can see I have my Tippman M4-22. This is a Metal Madness shooting sports association, so that's a sporting event that goes around and travels to different locales and brings the targets with them. Pretty interesting. You should look up online. I believe they're still out there running strong right now. This one's had a few modifications. Obviously, this is going to have the Seymour sight. This is the composite with 16 MOA dot. This is a TACCOM rear buttstock, completely adjustable. Me being a little bit taller guy, I have a hard time getting my cheek down on here with my shoulder way up here with a normal stock to be able to see the sights real well. So I drop that down a little bit. I get really nice cheek placement now. So let's make sure the gun is clear. As you can see, she is clear, no magazine. You can see daylight through there. Safety first, kids. Don't want the YouTube police yelling at us. So I'm going to go ahead and split this up real quick. We're just going to deal with the lower. Of course, take your pins, remove your upper. There we go. Pretty simple. Now, Bill, I am going to tell you, a really good investment is going to be a nice punch. You definitely want to get yourself a good punch. Brass is great. I use steel. If you don't want to mar up your pins, obviously use brass. Sorry about that. I had to grab some tools. So a punch is going to be very handy to drive those pins out. Also on reassembly. The other thing you're going to need is a Allen head. This one is actually, I believe, if I had my glasses on, this would be a lot easier. Well, you know what? It's going to depend on your gun and what bolt you have down in the handle. So what we're going to have to do is take this pistol grip off. Let's start there. In mine, there's just an Allen screw down in here. On pretty much any AR platform you're going to find, there's one single screw holding this pistol grip on. Now there is one thing you're going to want to be careful of, is when you go to take this handle off, make sure you keep track of this spring. So there's a little spring right here, if you can see that, that pushes down on a little detent, and that's what controls your safety and gives it that positive lock in safe or in fire. Okay, so we're going to take that, we're going to set that to the side, tip the gun out. There you go. There's the little detent right there. See that on the background? Okay, that's going to go pointed side down. If you look at it, there's a pointed side and then a side with a rebate in it. All right, so now we have that. We're going to go ahead and pull out our safety. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the hammer out. Okay, now before we go too much further, I should show you how this works. So whenever you're doing this, you want to be careful not to just let this hammer fall on the block. You can cause some damage to the aluminum frame. You can cause some damage to the hammer. In this case, most definitely to the aluminum. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold my finger here. I'm going to pull the trigger. Let that hammer ride forward just like that. Nice and safe and no problems. Take my punch. There we go. There's the pin, there's the hammer and spring, just like that. Don't worry, this spring isn't going to pop off. It's on these dog bones, if you will. It's held in there pretty good. And there's your pin. So now we got our hammer out. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take the trigger out. Same thing, we're just going to push that through. This one should be a little easier just because there's not as much tension. I push that all the way through. Bring the trigger up through. Okay. So now we have our trigger, our disconnect, and our other pin. So this is the part where you would decide whether you want to go with your stock trigger, which the Tippman trigger actually is really, really good. This is the stock Tippman trigger here. I actually decided to go with a Bull Moose Tactical flat face trigger with their 3.5 pound springs and their hammer. Really good product. I really like the flat face trigger. I like the lighter spring action. It didn't lighten up the trigger a tremendous amount, but these surfaces, these are your sear surfaces here. Right here will ride in with that notch right there on the hammer. All right. So when it's sitting and ready in battery, it sits like this. When the trigger's pulled, trigger comes down, releases the hammer forward. All right. So I'm not telling you to do this, but if you were in a situation or you felt so brave, you do not want to change the geometry of these edges. You also don't want to get them hot. So, i.e., you don't want to get out your Dremel tool and start polishing these and get them really, really hot. They're already heat treated, and you don't want to mess that up. Chances are you won't, but again, you want to be very careful with that. You want a nice, sharp lead on there, but you don't want to feel anything rough. If you run your fingernail down that, it should feel as smooth as a knife edge. Okay? And then if you want, you could put a little flitz on a rag. You could go in here and do this front face up to the front of the sear, the back side of the sear a little bit. But again, don't forget, don't go crazy. Don't change the geometry on this. I mean, you know, besides your finger, your booger hook, this is the next piece of safety. Okay, so we got the hammer out. This is where we decide whether or not we want to put the stock trigger back in, if we want to put a drop-in trigger. I will tell you this, in my experience so far, watch out for the drop-in triggers, the Timneys. I tried a Timney Impact AR-15. Love the trigger. Unfortunately, it did not work in my Timney, and I know that there's many of you out there that have had great luck with your Timneys, taking Elfman, and a bunch of other different brands that are out there. There's a lot of different trigger options, but beware, hold on to your receipt. Make sure it works in your gun properly. My problem that I had was in this Tippman, for some odd reason, in my particular case, the the Tippman impact AR-15 trigger would go binary on me. Binary, every time I pulled the trigger, it would send 2 down the bite. So yeah, can't do that. That's not safe. So let's do reinstall. Reinstall is super simple. It's just the reverse of what we did. I will also tell you there is a small spring here, if you can see that. That is for the disconnect to ride on. So when this is in the gun, there's going to be a pin down through here, obviously. And what this disconnect is for is when the hammer goes forward, when the bolt comes back into battery, the trigger's still pulled down. This hammer is going to come back, and that's going to catch. All right, and that's going to hold the hammer from going forward again until you release the trigger. Once you release the trigger, that comes back, and your sear will engage. Okay, so be cautious about polishing any of these or anything on the catch. That can cause some real problems. I've had issues in the past where I've gotten a little crazy with the Dremel and doing other things like that, and I've caused issues where I'll get, you know, again, runaway rounds. I'll get binary shots. It's not something you want to mess with. If you're not comfortable with this, you don't have a good safe place to go and test, you're not a gunsmith, I would not suggest it. Not a great idea. But again, there's nothing wrong with going in and polishing these surfaces up right in here, especially on the hammer. Be careful in that little sear pocket there about doing any sort of polishing or anything like that. Don't do anything other than hand tools. I probably wouldn't even recommend, if you're not comfortable with this, I wouldn't even recommend maybe using an Arizona stone. Maybe just get some flits, get in there, polish it up as best you can. You could even, and I know there's a lot of guys that will get a little lapping paste and they'll put in there and then they'll just fire. There's a lot of other tricks online, obviously, you can look at. I've seen this shoe, the rope trick, and a bunch of other things that I've never tried them. I can't speak to that. So let's put this back together. First thing we're going to want to do, we're going to take our trigger group and we're going to want to make sure that the spring sits just like this. It's under this front part behind the sear, and these 2 legs are pointing this way. That's going to go right in. You'll notice I also have my disconnect sitting in there right now. So that'll go right in. Oops. Yeah, there we go. So that's going to drop right in, and ideally what we should see is these 2 springs are pointing forward and sitting on the base of the receiver. Then we're going to take our disconnect, and remember the disconnect hook has to face forward towards the hammer. So we're going to set that down in there. And you'll feel a little resistance, and that's actually that spring back there for the disconnect. And just simply line our holes back up carefully. Stick our pin in. Sometimes it needs a little bit more persuasion than that. Let's see how we're lined up on this side. I promise, Bill, it's usually not this difficult. I'm just making it look difficult because it's on camera right now. Usually have it up. There we go. Have it up in my lap. All right, so we're flush. Both pins are through. Trigger's in place. Feels like it's operating well. All right, the next area where I mess up a lot and I end up having to take this all back apart is I forget to put the safety in next. Before you put the hammer in, you want to put the safety in. So we're going to go ahead and put that safety right in there. And you'll notice when that safety's there, that's what limits the travel. And that's all it does. The way this is cut, see, it's round, 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 then it has a flat spot. Obviously that's fire. And then it goes back to the round spot. That's safe. All it does is limit the travel of that trigger so that the sear cannot disengage from the hammer. Okay? Real simple. All right, so we got our trigger, we got our safety, we're good so far. Let's install the hammer. Now the hammer, if you look, so this is the face of the hammer, this is what's going to hit the firing pin. You see how the spring is laid over, and the way it's pointing, these two legs right here are actually going to sit on the pin that's holding your trigger right now. That's what those grooves are in that pin for these pieces of metal, this spring steel, to fall into those to hold that pin in place. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set this down in very carefully. Now this one can be a booger. I will say that if you are so inclined, you could make yourself a what do I want to call it, an assist, a dummy rod, whatever you want to call it. So if you're having problems putting this together, take a golf tee or a nail the right diameter. Get a nail about the same diameter as this, cut it shorter than the pin so that you can piece everything together outside the gun, set it in, and then push that dowel pin through with your retainer pin. Okay, I don't need that. A little practice, you'll get very, very good at this. So we're going to lay this down in. We got our springs over top of the trigger. I'm going to push the trigger down in, or the hammer down in rather. I'll line up that hole. This is the part where I really have to be careful not to swear on YouTube. Oh, I gotta turn this a little bit. This is really, yeah, with all of you watching, of course, it's more difficult. And Bill, I know there's going to be people out there yelling and screaming I'm beating on my gun. I'm really not. I'm using the back of that screwdriver just because my fingertips aren't quite strong enough to push that through. There we go. All right, we're flush on this side, flush on that side. Oh, make sure the hammer cocks. It does. Remember, hold your finger up here. Goes off good. Another thing that you want to check for proper function is hold that trigger down. Okay, make sure it's in safe or in fire. Hold that trigger down, bring it back, and see if it clicks and holds. All right, that's your disconnect. Grabbing the hammer right now after the bolt has brought it back. Keeping your hand here, let off the trigger. There's the reset. Function good. Hold the trigger, push it back, let go, reset. Looks great. We're going to leave it just like that for now. All right, now we're going to put the handle back on. So there's a couple ways to do this. You know, if you have another set of hands around, that makes it even better. But I don't, so here we go. So you're going to take this little dowel, this little pointy, and put it right back down in there, okay? And that's the detent, again, for the safety. You can see it come up and down depending on if I'm in fire or safe. I find it's much, much easier to go ahead and just kind of set this here. Hold on for a second. No. Anyway, we'll tip it back up in just a second. What I like to do is put my spring right there in the handle. Get that ready. Get my tool and my bolt ready. So I'm going to go ahead and there we go. All right, so I got everything all set. You know, just need to be double jointed, and so we'll tip this up. I'm holding that spring with my index finger and drop it down in there. You can see that spring is going into that detent right there. Hold it down. I don't know what the proper torque is for this, guys. Reference your owner's manual, go online, do whatever. I use a very precise German measurement. It's click, good and tight. There we go. And there you go. Your lower is all back together. You should have full function now, so we'll check the safety. All right, with the hammer back, safety on. Nope, she don't go bang. Safety off. Yep, she'll go bang, hold the trigger. Disconnect is caught. Reset's good. trigger's good. Now right now with this trigger in and a little bit of work that I've done polishing the sear and everything else, again, this is about 3.5 pounds. And I know you can't really tell on TV, but there's not a lot of pull. Little bit of take up, boop, and it breaks nice and clean. The reset's really tactile. You can hear it really well. Click. Most ARs are going to sound the same. This is pretty standard. So, Bill, I sure hope that answered your question. I'm going to go ahead and clean my gun now. We were out, shot about 200 rounds in practice today, so get this thing all cleaned up and ready for the weekend. Hey, if y'all have any questions, any requests, there's something else you want to go over, 1911s, Remington 700s, PCCs, in an air platform, anything like that, let me know. I've got to do a little work on a friend's Ruger Precision in 308 here. Maybe I'll put something up online about that. But shout out to the Tippman owners, and thank you very much. And please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.